Good morning, America, and welcome to Taxes Made Easy. Hope you had a great weekend. I want to thank everybody for watching live or on rebroadcast. And we've got an interesting topic today. Businesses. I get asked all the time, how do I start a business? But just as often, how do I close out a business and do it correctly? And we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls and opening a business, running a small business, and what are some of the issues to look out for as and it can either be as a hobby, a small side time gig, or your full livelihood. So again, this is very important to many people. Running a business can put bread on your table, and if you don't do it right, it can cause massive problems for you and your family. So again, one of the big things we want to do is help people avoid problems, so you don't have to hire someone like us. Uh, we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back, everybody. Hubert Johnson here with Taxes Made Easy. A lot of news. We're going to try to jump through it quickly, and it pretty much runs along the same theme. Overall economic turmoil. Ooh, gloom and doom. I hate to be that guy that's always gloom and doom, but um, we're going to first talk about an article about China's financial situation. I have been ignoring these articles about China, but there's been quite a few, and this is from the Epic Times. China had their credit rating down, well, the outlook downgraded, so very minor. Fitch is like Moody, they pretty much determine the credit worthiness of different countries. Now, the United States we've had our credit rating downgraded, and which costs us more borrowed money, which is that's a huge problem. So we're borrowing more money than ever. Our interest is going through the roof. But if the percent of interest, if our credit rating continues to get downgraded by Moody's and Fitch, that's going to make it more expensive to handle this huge national debt that we have of $34 trillion currently and going up by the day. So this is a huge issue for China to have their outlook downgraded, but they still have an A plus rating. The United States thing has like a double A place rating. We used to have triple A, but again, due to the inability of Congress to take our finances seriously on both sides of the aisle, it's been downgraded. So again, the Chinese government, of course, threw a fit. They said this is ridiculous, da da da. And so again, having your credit downgraded reflects poorly on the global economy. Um, but here in this article, they claim that Fitch and Moody did not go far enough. China, and this is what happened when you have a command economy, when the government commands and dictates and controls things. You're going to have massive distortions, and they've been having problems for quite some time with their real estate market. Now, China, being half communist, half it's run as a communist country, but the secret to China's success is that they've been over the years moving more and more to an open economy. Now it's open only as much as the communist government will allow it, and if they don't like what's happening, they quickly switch. So it's not an open and free market by any means, but they're trying to use capitalism to lift their people out of poverty and become an economic powerhouse to challenge the United States. Again, they have over 1 billion people, 3 times the population of the United States. If they can get to where they can get anywhere close to us, they should overtake us economically. But again, their government is the biggest problem. And again, communism just stifles economies. So again, the number one is the property crisis they've been dealing with, and and that's again, housing markets, we're seeing the same issue here where our housing market is essentially stagnant right now. And if again, it's because there's been a lot of questionable debt and people have realized they're getting burned. It's not the safe investment it used to be. So again, this kind of points to whenever you have volatility, a market's unpredictable, it creates ripple effects throughout the economy. So it kind of gets more in the details, and I don't want to really focus on the details here. I want to focus on our economy here. So I'm going to go and share this article. This one we're going to dive into a little bit more. But what happens elsewhere, again, it's a very big problem here in the United States. So this is the Daily Caller. It talks about current inflation. Current inflation just went up. Economic growth was 1.6%, less than what was expected of 2.5%. So there's still growth in the economy. The problem is, where is this growth happening? Where is job growth happening? Mostly in government jobs, because we're still spending and hiring government workers like crazy, and part-time work. So people are going, overall full-time jobs are being lost and going to part-time work. So when you have low growth and then almost over double that in inflation, and that's just for the first quarter, but this again, inflation has been persistently high. Economic growth has gone up and down. It was high towards the end of last year, and then again it's dropped down. The problem with looking at economic growth is it measures all the money government is spending and treating that as growth. It's not real growth. Government doesn't create hardly anything. They take money and then they spend it on programs, on enforcement, regulations, etc. There's no production coming out of that. But again, when you look at the production numbers, or the production numbers are flat. That's a big concern. So again, stagflation is the word being thrown around again. I mentioned this plenty of times. And they said, we're already here. We're already there where we're having stagflation. So this harkens back. Last time we had stagflation was the Carter administration. So we're borrowing trillions of economic growth from buying by the future, and it's highly inefficient. So we're spending future dollars today, and that's what's propping up our current numbers. But it's got to be paid back with interest over time, and it's going to be very painful in the future when the bill has to be paid. You know, the butcher's bill always has to be paid. No free lunches. Anybody tells you otherwise, they're selling you something. That's a quote from The Princess Bride. But again, very true. Anybody telling you that there's a free lunch, that there's not a cost to something, is selling you a bill of goods. You better ask what is going on here. So what is stagflation? It's where you have slow growth or low growth, high unemployment, and elevated inflation. So right now, people would say, look, unemployment is not high. The numbers are low. The official numbers are low, but you've got to understand that they've distorted, and it's not just the Biden administration. The Obama administration did it, the Trump administration continued with it, and the Biden administration has doubled down on it. We can't look at the numbers today in the same way as we did in the past because they've changed the numbers. We've talked about how some of these economic indicators changed in the Reagan era. So again, Republican, Democrat, they've both done it. So right now we have supposedly low inflation numbers, but the lowest participation rate in 40 years. So if you don't have people participating in the economy, you can say, oh, well, we have low unemployment because we excluded so many people from the economy, from the numbers. And that's really the true story here, is that you got to look at the participation rate. Now, as far as elevated inflation, we know that's here. Slow growth, that's a concern. It's normal to have minor inflation with growth. The more growth you have, you should have some inflation. But again, inflation is outpacing growth consistently, and that's the problem. So since President Biden took office, the national debt has increased about 6.8 billion. The problem with that number is it increased, I believe, just as much under Trump. A lot of that was COVID and all the damage from COVID. Um, but again, like I said, under Trump, they had both parties. They had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they did not seriously tackle debt. Um, Now here they go off and they blame Biden. They blame Biden. Um, has Biden done anything to fix things? No. They've passed all these spending bills, which have made things worse. Um, Forgiving student loans. Now on the flip side of the coin, they quote, Jai Kedia, and they say, no, we're not at stagflation, despite the numbers you said. You have to have major supply shocks. She argues that, look, this is overall issues with normacy. Inflation and output are both bad numbers. And then they try to argue that stagflation in the 70s was mainly caused by labor union bargaining as a unique event. Again, it's not just, I think it's never one factor. It's the overall effect of the economy. And that's what we're going to go and talk about in the rest of the articles that we're going to touch on. It's not just one thing that causes stagflation. It's overall decrease in output with high inflation. And so, what is the biggest driver of inflation? Overspending. The government printing money like crazy. You see it in Argentina, you see it throughout the world. Every time you have a government that overspends like crazy, inflation is going to happen. Money isn't made out of thin air. When you do that, then it drives everything up. We saw it in Germany in the 20s. It is a regular thing. It's almost asking for inflation when you overspend. In Argentina, what did they do? We have a brand new conservative president. He's very aggressive. A lot of people call him crazy. But what has he done? He has cut spending to the bone. And what's happened to inflation? They're rampant out of, we're talking in the 100, 200, 700%. It's actually calmed down because of that. So, getting rid of regulation that stifles businesses, stopping the overspending are the one and two ways of helping a business grow and getting out of that. And we're coming up on another break, so we're going to hit these last couple articles fairly quickly once we come back. Welcome back, everybody. Taxes Made Easy. Just following up on our topic for today. Small businesses. We're going to talk about a couple things that affect businesses globally. And that's kind of been our focus is first China, then the U.S. economy. The G20, which is mainly Europe and Brazil, South Africa. So you have the biggest countries in the world putting together an idea to impose a 2% wealth tax on the world's billionaires. This isn't money that they have available, but just looking at their overall wealth and saying, okay, give 2% to the government, this isn't even the UN. This is different ministers trying to pass a 2% wealth tax, or it's being proposed. So you have another G20 meeting in June. So Ironically, this targets Americans more than anything else because that's where we have the most billionaires, um, and it's extra constitutional. So again, this tax, taxes need to be approved by Congress, and again, taxation without representation. So it has a lot of constitutional issues here, but doesn't mean they won't try to do it. So what again does this do? It just drives the wealthiest that have the most mobility to go somewhere else, take their money elsewhere. I don't have to play with you. I can go play somewhere else. And that's exactly what happens. So, last article, again, another Wall Street Journal opinion piece talking about who pays corporate taxes. And this is the kicker here. Whenever you have someone, and this mainly comes from the left, but whenever you have someone saying, look, we can just attack the rich, attack corporations, greedy corporations, and again, I'm trying not to be overly partisan, but this comes directly from Obama's mouth all the time. Whenever they try to tax corporations, who actually pays for that? Look in the mirror, which is the title of the article. So again, whenever you have tax cuts, and this goes into a lot of details, a lot of numbers about this, it eventually hit individuals, the purchasers, the people buying the products more than anything else. And if anything else, it hurts the 401ks, the IRAs, the investments, people that have invested into these companies. So again, it reduces money flow. It hurts the economy in general. So again, it doesn't help to ever target and single out one section of Americans and claim, oh, we're not going to hurt the little guy. You're always going to hurt the little guy when you attack part of the country. Now, should the rich pay their fair share of taxes? Sure. Sounds great. But kind of think they are already if they're paying close to half the taxes. If you look at the top 1%, if you look at the top 10%, they're paying well over half the taxes being paid in the country. So for the topic of the day, there's an IRS article under irs.gov. Click on the news, and this is National Small Business Week, and this is going to segue directly into our topic for the day. So again, small businesses. How do you get information? Now I'm going to share this article just as we walk through it, and it's going to go right into what we're talking about today. So lately, the IRS hasn't had that many articles. But this one I think is a good one. And again, Small Business Week 2024 begins, and here's a lot of tax resources. So SBA is a good resource for people. And this whole week, or this year, be showcasing numerous resources to help small business learn and understand their tax responsibilities. So, and this kind of goes through what they're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of this today, but I think this is great to really focus on. If you have questions, ask, because I see this is so true that people step into a business, they start opening it, they start running a business and doing what they love, what they enjoy. They have a dream. They want to make this successful. And then it becomes a nightmare when things aren't done right. So we want to help you make sure it's done right. So this succeeds and doesn't give you a bunch of nightmares, but actually helps you enjoy what you're doing and be able to sleep easy at night. So this is what they're going to cover this week. Best practices for small businesses. What to know when starting a business, beware of scams, tips for tax pros, and then expect the unexpected, prepare for issues. So not only federally related disasters, but other issues that affect it. So we're going to talk about some of these different issues. And I'm going to kind of start from the bottom up. And some of this information we've covered before, but again, this week, I think it's great to focus on small businesses. So you want to go start a ballet studio. My daughter does ballet. What's the first thing you need to do? Very first thing you should do, you need to put together a plan. If you're not sure how to do that or how to, what steps you need to take, talk to a business coach. There are plenty of business coaches out there can help you. You can get some information online. Um, and again, here's a nice little link here, starting a business. You click on this. It's a whole article, what you need to know, da 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 da. It's a little more complicated than what we're going to do, but this is key right here. Refer to your state's website. So when it says state's websites, it's going to take you to the Secretary of State for each state. I think this is very helpful. But before we even get that complicated, so you make a plan. This is how you're going to do it. This is how you're going to fund the business. This is what you want to do. You need people to teach at the dance studio. You get some ideas out of how's it going to work. Where are you going to rent? Are you going to start it from your home? How are you going to make this work? Now, once you plan things out, and again, if you plan to fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So true. So flush this out, walk through your ideas. But number two thing, and this is where a lot of business owners get in trouble. You need to go open a separate business account. Now, is this going to be a little bit of a pain at first? Yes. But when it talks about record keeping, when it talks about knowing what your business expenses are, it will help you understand the health of your business. It helps you in so many ways to have a separate business account. Now, initially, we're going to start small here. You can just go open a business account using your social security number. It's just like opening up any other account. You'll just label it, R&J Dance Zone or a dance studio. So RJ Dance Studio. We're going to start off with that. That's our name of our business. RJ Dance Studio. I just made that up. But this is what goes on your bank account. It's not the fixed name of your business. You can change it. You can change the name with your bank. But go to your bank, open up that business account. And once you do, all money for the business goes into that account. Now, what happens if the business doesn't have enough money? Can you move money from your personal account to the business account to support the business? Yes, but labeled as such. So what you don't want to do is be putting money in and pulling it out, putting money in and pulling it out. You want to make sure that it's clearly labeled so that you can anybody can look at it and say, okay, here's money that came from the personal account to support the business, and then it was paid back to the individual from the business once the business had money. But we want to see regular, clear information, because if you don't label it, it looks like income when it's really just you're spending money to support your business. It's the opposite of income. So once you have that separate account, only use it for the business. No personal expenses coming out of there. I have someone that owes around $700,000 to $800,000, and they're getting audited for multiple years. And the main reason they're getting audited is they had a large business, but they never learned this rule. They never learned to only use their business account for business expenses. So as a result, their numbers are a mess, and a lot of things that could be business expenses are being disallowed. So if you mix business with pleasure or personal expenses in an account, the IRS is going to scrutinize it, and any CPA worth their salt will look at it and say, okay, well, now you have to prove everything as a business expense. Makes it a lot harder. However, if you're careful about it and you keep all those expenses separate, only personal expenses only come out, and personal income only go into your personal accounts. Business income and all business expenses come out of the business account. it's easy, and you'll get the benefit of the doubt if they don't see any personal expenses being commingled with business expenses. So again, can't hammer on this enough. This is the number one issue and a mistake that small business owners make, is that they mix personal and business expenses. Bad idea. Don't do it. Again, we see people burned by that all the time. It's a regular issue. And then the next thing you need to do is exactly what this suggests. Go to your state website, your state Secretary of State. So if you pull up the Secretary of State, or you can call them, how do I start a business? They help you start a small business. So if we just click on it, go to Arizona, doing business in the state, license guide, Secretary of State right there, corporation commission, and it depends on how complicated your business is. So a dance studio, we're not selling anything. It's a service business. But if you are selling anything, you're opening a restaurant, you're opening, if you're opening a bar or you need a liquor license, you absolutely need to go to the Secretary of State, Corporation Commission, Commerce Authority. You need to start getting those things done. And something like that, you're not going to run off of your Social Security number. If you have something like that, you're going to have to get an EIN. So first thing, you'll select a business structure. What is your business going to look like? And there's quite a few different options. Sole props, partnerships, corporations, S corporations, limited liability companies. So to start off, a lot of people just start off as a sole prop, sole owner. Now, once you start, if you're selling anything, or once you start getting employees, then you need an EIN. What is an EIN? It's an employer identification number. And for a lot of taxes and business issues, you have to have an EIN to file those returns. To file a business return, you need an EIN. You can't use your Social Security number in most cases. So how do you get an EIN? It's pretty easy. You just you do a simple application to the IRS. They come pretty quickly. They give out EINs like candy, pretty much. And once you get an EIN, it's important that you make sure your bank account is now under that EIN. So if when you do your business plan, if you know you're going to need to do some of the things, you're going to have to pay sales tax, you're going to have, because you're going to sell items to the public, either food or you're going to make something and it's going to be sold, you're going to have to go get an EIN. And when you go open your bank account, just put it under that EIN. So again, that's an easy way to avoid that step of having to switch from an EIN or a bank account under your Social Security number as a business checking account, and then putting that under an EIN. But you can make that switch later on as your business grows and the needs of the business grow and change. So again, that's something to be aware of, and you want to make sure that there are a lot of protections to having an EIN. So the first category here is sole proprietorships. It's really basic. This is Schedule C business. And when you're filing your tax returns, honestly, if you're a sole prop, if it's small enough, you might be able to get away with a simple Schedule C, profit and loss, self-employment tax. Make sure you're paying estimated taxes. And if you have employees or you're paying yourself payroll, that's when you start doing 941s, 940s. So again, here's your 940 unemployment tax. If you have questions about this, talk to a CPA or tax professional. The average sole proprietorship needs help with all of this. That's a lot to handle. It's a lot of information. And trust me, when you don't do it right, it creates a lot of problems. I can't tell you how many people I've seen do their own profit and loss when they didn't know how to do it right and created massive issues for themselves down the road. So again, get good information, talk to a CPA, a tax preparer, get a couple opinions to make sure someone is familiar with business issues. If they normally don't handle business issues, I'm sorry, use somebody else. I don't care if it's a friend, Uncle Joey, or whatever. If they're not familiar with business issues, go somewhere else because it could really hurt your business. Okay. Partnership. A lot of businesses, when you do your business plan, when you plan this out, I'm going to go in with a buddy of mine. We're going to, make that work. It's even more important with the partner that you plan, that you put some kind of agreement into place. Again, you have to have an annual information return. Doesn't mean it gets taxed, but you have to file that. The form for partnerships is a 1065. So again, this gets a little bit more complicated when you have a partner. Use a tax professional. Make sure it's done right. Again, if you have any employees, if you're paying yourselves employees, 940s, 941s, so 940, 941s. And then you have to start issuing 1099s to individuals. And you have to be very careful about 1099s to people you work with that aren't employees. The IRS and especially the states as well are really cracking down on treating people as 1099s. It's really frustrating. I had someone that we represented who got audited for this. And they even told the auditors, look, if you guys make us go to W-2 for everything, a lot of my employees are going to just leave. And what have they done? They have left and they've gone to other shops that haven't been audited yet. So again, it creates disparate, unfair treatment, but that's where the government is going. This is the concern. So watch out for that. Excise or sales taxes. I mean, you've got to talk to a professional. As soon as you start selling anything, you have to worry about sales taxes, possible excise taxes. So it becomes a lot more complicated very quickly. And I'm going to throw this out here. Understand how to create and end a partnership. But more than anything else, you need some kind of agreement in place. Why do you need an agreement in place? I can't tell you how many times, and I'm coming up on another break, someone's gotten burned out of a partnership. Someone racked up tax debt, even after someone left, and someone else got stuck with it. So we'll continue that after this break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about partnerships, and I was just touching on something to be very concerned with and careful about when it comes to partnerships. That is, make sure you have a good working agreement. And this little article link here, how to end a partnership. So, attorneys in general, we're known to be pessimists in that we plan for the worst. We warn people about how to, when people are starting a business, they're all excited about it. Everybody's gung-ho about it. But this is why good planning is so important. This is why getting good advice is so important, because over time, the novelty of a new business wears off. The workload cannot be, sometimes people just aren't up for the workload. They will let one person carry the carry the business, etc. And I had a true case. Someone had a partnership. It went south, so the one individual, the person I represented, stepped away from the business, didn't want to have anything to do with it because the other partner essentially excluded them from the accounts, from making any business decisions. So years later, my client decided to go to law school. So she went through law school and graduated and then was trying to get admitted to the bar. And the bar, before they admit people to the state bar to practice as an attorney, is they do a thorough review of everything going on with someone's life, case history, etc. And sometimes it's overwhelming, a little ridiculous. They found all these business debts from these closed corporations that was still in her name. Why? Because when she left the partnership, she didn't make sure that her name was pulled off the partnership, that she was not extricated correctly from the partnership. So as a result, they found all these balances that had been rung up by her ex-partner, and she went to the ex-partner. Initially, the ex-partner was like, "Oh, sure, I'll help." Da da da. But when I actually came to pay the bill, the ex-partner kind of quietly disappeared, ghosted her, was nowhere to be found. So before she could get licensed to practice as an attorney, she had to resolve all kinds of business issues that were accrued after she walked away from the partnership, but because her name was still attached, she had been assessed all these balances and she didn't know about any of it. Now, another type of partnership could, again, here's a link for it: married couples in business. I mean, there's you don't have to be a partnership as a married couple, but this is, we see what happens down the road when people are getting divorced, when problems have hit the fan, and the business is winding down, closing down. Sometimes it's just economics, but when a business is not shut down correctly, or one person is managing the business, and sometimes there's nothing nefarious about it. Sometimes the person running the business dies, but they don't have any plan in place. They don't have anything together, and then their poor, spouse or widow has to figure out all of this. What's going on with the business? How bad is this? And then they have to fire professionals. They don't know what's going on. They don't have access to the accounts. If you don't plan, you hurt everybody around you. So again, I see it in divorce. I see where people die, or people get seriously ill and they can't handle the business, and all of a sudden it all falls on the spouse to figure things out or to clear things up. There are a couple ways to avoid responsibility. One, not have your name connected to the business at all. But if you're filing jointly and there's joint debts, it could be a problem. If you have business debts and your partner or your spouse works in the business at all, especially if they act as a secretary or something like that, they can still be held fully responsible for unpaid payroll taxes, for example. It becomes a problem. And any assets of the business are subject to any business taxes that aren't paid. So there's plenty of ways to do this in a harmonious way, where if husband wants to go and run this new business, wife doesn't want to have anything to do with it, that's fine. You can file separately, file as married, file in separate, so that way you don't have to worry about any tax consequences from your spouse during this time period. And again, one of the biggest issues I see is where people work together, and then the nasty thing that people will do is when they're getting divorced, especially if it's not a good divorce. I've seen plenty of people issue a fake 1099 on their spouse. Say, hey, look at all this income they got. And it makes it easier to run the business, but again, it really hurts their spouse on the way out. So again, when you're married in business, or if you have a partner, make sure you have a clear partnership agreement. Make sure you understand how to get out of the partnership and absolve yourself of ongoing responsibility for the partnership, and that will protect you. So then you get into corporations. There's corporations organized per se. That's where you have shareholders, capital stock. Most people out the gate are not going and forming corporations. It's much more common that people are creating S corporations or a limited liability company. An S corp is very easy. Pretty much, you have an 1120S that you have to file. Again, have a tax professional do it unless you have tax experience yourself. But even then, probably better to have someone handle that, again, take on that responsibility and liability. But everything flows from the corporate return directly to your business return, and then you have various kinds of limited liability companies. And again, talk to a corporate attorney. There are plenty of corporate attorneys that sounds really expensive. They don't have to be, and I know some that are very reasonable and help small businesses get organized all the time on a regular basis. So again, selecting a business structure, huge, very important. Getting the EIN is the next big step. Now, if you're just running a small shop, or let's say on this, you're just doing a dance studio where you're the only person and you're just holding classes, etc., not a problem. When you bring someone else into it, that's when it becomes a little more complicated and you need some more planning. You might be best friends now, but good rules and clear guidelines help maintain those friendships, because then once things start to go south, you guys have already decided this is how it's going to be controlled. This is how it's going to be decided. Business taxes. How do you, again, income tax, estimated taxes, self-employment taxes, employment taxes to the state, and to the IRS. So you have to worry about, and then excise taxes or sales taxes. So you have to worry about all of those. So manufacturers sell certain products, certain kinds of business. If you use various kinds of equipment, facilities, products, receive payment for certain services. So, and then it goes through different types. So fuel taxes for 2290s. There's all kinds of different taxes. Some are collected by the federal government, some by the states. And it can get very complicated. So as you plan this out in the beginning, and if you've already started and you already have stuff going, this is a perfect time to still go down and talk to a professional. Here's what I have. How do I need to, what do I need to change? How can I do this better? And one of the biggest things here, this is the number one thing that burns small businesses: record keeping. Talks about why I should keep records, what kind of records should you keep. Again, if you're running everything through your credit cards and bank statements, you have proof of that, of all those. Now here's a caveat: when you switch banks, you might not still have all those records. So before you switch banks, it would be smart to download all those bank records and save them somewhere, ideally on the cloud, so that you have access to those. You don't have to keep any special kinds of records, but again, any major purchases, proof of expenses, and how long you should keep records, at least 6 years. But in the case of state taxes, 10 years. Usually after 10 years, they're not going to come in and try to hit you with anything. But this is why it's important to have someone in touch, making sure everything's filed. Again, it's not a bad idea. This is me being a little bit overzealous, but it's not a bad idea just to check in with the state, check in with the federal government. How should you record? Again, it should all go through your business accounts. You need to be using some kind of program. Your employment records at least 4 years. But again, I just want to I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. There's so much information here. But keeping good records is absolutely key. If you are not using some kind of program to help manage your budget, there's so many different ways and programs out there. There's Intuit, there's Quicken, there's Dave Ramsey has programs, etc. If you put out, business budgeting, there's some that are better, some that aren't so good. But there are plenty of programs that will sit there and they will take the information directly from your bank account and use it to put together profit and loss for you. So you can look at your monthly profit or loss. It will tell you, give you an estimate of what needs to be paid in estimated taxes, or you can use a CPA or tax preparer to help do that. They're not used to doing that quarterly. But again, with the underpayment of the Congress increased to 8% the penalty for underpaying estimated taxes throughout the year. So if you have a business, I highly recommend you get in the habit of paying at least quarterly taxes, or every quarter pay estimated tax payments. And if that's a pain for you to do it every quarter, do it monthly. Do what works for you so that you stay on top of this. Because the number one thing for small business owners is that they end up owing taxes at the end of the year and they don't have enough money set aside for it. You have to set aside money for other, payroll taxes as well. Just as an example, you have an employee that he's salaried, and he gets about $3,700 net every single paycheck. Now, to pay him, how much does the business have to pay? What kind of cost does the business have to pay? It's just over $5,000 every time I pay this individual, but he only gets $3,700. So about $1,300 goes to taxes every single time I pay this individual. So again, look at the whole picture. Don't look at just what I have to get on payroll, but look at the whole picture, because it definitely adds up, and there are so many pitfalls here for businesses. So we're running out of time for today. We're going to dive right back into this tomorrow, because again, primary takeaways: plan. Sit down, make a plan, talk to a corporate attorney, talk to someone or a business coach that can help you plan out what do you need. Look at the states. Make sure that you comply with the Secretary of State. Look at your city. You might even, and I haven't even gotten to that yet, you might need a business license with the city where you live. And then make sure you understand what kind of obligations, legal and tax obligations you're going to have in dealing with taxes. And then you have to pick what kind of formation works best for you. Again, if you're going to start small, start small. Figure it out as you go. Don't feel like you have to build this whole structure. And sometimes people spend so much time building a structure rather than just starting their business. But when you do it, cannot emphasize enough, get your own separate business bank account. If you treat it well, it will yield results. So do not mix business and pleasure. Whatever is a business expense, keep that in that business account. Whatever isn't, you use your personal account for. So don't mix the two. And that way, when you do use a program, or if you do use someone to look at and put do your accounting, to reconcile everything with your bank accounts, it makes it so much easier to understand where your money's coming from and what are your liabilities for taxes, so that you can stay on top of it. It pays in spades to stay on top of it. And we're going to come back. We're going to continue this conversation, but talk about some of the pitfalls and what happens when a business can't stay on top of their taxes. And some of the issues there. Number one thing, it's easy to not pay taxes, but that can definitely hurt a business more than anything else. We'll talk about what happens when you hit those situations as well. So stay tuned for tomorrow. Again, Iris is going to be focusing on small businesses all week, and I'll probably do the same. It's a great topic here as we, now that we're done with taxes, a lot of people are going to be looking at, what can we do now? How can we improve our business? So we will see you tomorrow, and have a great day.